Layers. That's what this episode's about. 3, 5, 7 of the ROBCAST. Because I have become, God, what's the word for it? I've become a bit of a scavenger. Yeah, because we remodeled this house. It was built in 1960. And there was all this stack of wood from the kitchen cabinets and this shelving unit. And I pulled the nails out of the wood and sort of sanded it and started doing all these paintings on this wood. But then I worked through that whole pile of wood, and that was a lot of pieces. But then my neighbor across the street, he decided to remodel his kitchen and his bathroom. And so one day there's a whole pile of wood in his driveway. So I go over and I'm like, hey, Johnny, what are you gonna do with that wood? And he's like, toss it. I said, can I have it? And he said, yeah. So I went through, I took off all those little knobs and handles and cut some of it up and made that pile, but then I painted on all that wood. So then I found myself driving around. Like just when I'd see a house being remodeled, just I pull over or walking the dog, just say, hey, do you want that wood? One couple streets over, we're like, hey, anytime we have wood we don't want, we'll just put it out in the front yard, and then when you drive by, just know it's for you. But then the next door neighbors moved in because that house was for sale, a 1940s ranch. And when I met them, they said, hey, we're gonna gut this house all the way down to the studs. And I said, you are? They said, yes. And I said, will that involve lots of wood? They looked at me like, who is this neighbor? What is going on? And they were like, yeah. I was like, well, I'd love to see some of that wood. So they started making a pile at the end of every day of literally gutting that place all the way down to the studs. They started making a pile in the front yard, right out there. And each night I would go over and go through the pile. And at one point, one of the owners said to me, she said, the kitchen's pink. There's all these wood, like plywood cabinet doors in the kitchen. We're about to pull those out. And I thought, ooh. And then that night, a big pile of pink plywood. Could anything be better? So I brought that pink plywood over here and I stared at those pieces of pink plywood for weeks, months maybe. Like, God, what am I gonna paint on those? Because they just had all this patina, all this history, all this age, all this, they were like kind of ugly, but kind of classic. And I was like, yeah, I gotta do something good with these. And I see now the problem. Is I like psyched myself up for, you don't want to waste this old weird pink wood. So I remember sketching out. I started to have an idea. I was like, ooh, I know what I'm going to do on that wood. I got a big idea. And it involved a story about a thing, and the imagery, and I sketched it out because I was like, I'm going to get one shot. If I'm going to pour paint, this acrylic pouring medium, and like do this, and I don't want to mess it up. So I got to better sketch it so I really know, which once again is like get the brain involved. Ugh. So then I cleared everything out of the garage, and I had this table with this canvas on it that I could put the wood on, so it was all like I could walk all the way around it. Like I prepped for a day to get ready, and then I like mixed all these different colors and I poured it, and God, it was so ugly. It was seriously so ugly. Like for some reason I thought that brown would work, but the brown just looked like a cat vomited. And then there was some like silverish white, but it exactly looked like when a bird like poops on your car. And there was like a red that I thought would be like a deep, rich, almost maroon, but instead it looked like someone like cut themselves. And then I had done a bunch of black, but the black, it was just, and I stared at it then, I just watched it. I just kept checking in on it over the day as it hardened. And it just kept getting uglier. Like time just made it more like that is just, everything is wrong about that painting. And by the end of the day, and there was so much paint, I just poured layer upon layer upon layer. By the end of the day, I was like, I can't even bear, I can't even bear to be in the presence. I was gonna say of this piece of artwork, but artwork would be too generous. Art would be too kind to say to it. So I got a scraper from the toolbox. I was like, that's it. And I just scraped it all into a big pile. And the pile was like that big. The pile was it was a big pile of just wet, like somewhat, God, just awful. It's even talking about it just is like brutal. Why don't I just do a simple clean pour over top of those scrapes? Because I can't, once I'd scraped it, that paint was in the wood and I could not get it out. And I have noticed recently how I'm slightly obsessed with stars and flowers and how similar they are. It's like a star dies. That's what stars are doing. They're dying, but stars create the fundamental elements that make life on Earth possible. And so it's like stars want to be Earth, literally become Earth. So stars want to be Earth, but flowers have this explosive, it's almost like flowers want to be stars and stars want to be flowers. And I love a flower that can't decide whether it's a star or a flower, and the idea of a star that can't decide whether it's a flower or a star, because all of it speaks to who we are. And so I just do this black star, because I was like, I'll just start there. It's already gone. My planning didn't work. The scraping was just so painful and just made it worse, just made a mess. Maybe if I just do like a black star, it's almost like, yeah, this thing is dead. Because that's what a star does, it dies. Yeah. So I do that just because I was like, I'm probably gonna toss this anyway, because it was just I have no idea what I'm doing. I really don't. But then, God, I start to like it. You know what I mean? I start to like it. It's like if I tried to make those scrape marks, I couldn't do it. Like if I tried to do that, the scrapes and all those layers of colors give it like an energy, like a dark energy, but also like something happened here, right? Like it may be ugly, but man, at least something happened. Yeah, that speaks to me. It speaks to me at some level. Yeah, all that planning that like just flat out didn't work, and like scrapping it, but then the scrapping, literally the scraping of the plan is what gives it all the depth and mess that is what makes me like it. Yeah. So it's weirdly, gradually, it's coming in the back door, becoming one of my favorites. Yeah. It's the layers. It's the layers that make it interesting. You know the thing when you're watching a show and somebody, like maybe somebody in your family comes through and they stop and stand there and watch the show for a second, and you look up and see them and they're completely lost, but they're weirdly riveted and they're just standing there. So you pause it and you go, okay, this person here, they used to be with this person. This person, their sister died. This person over here, they were in an earlier episode. We haven't seen them for a while, but now they've come back, but they've got this thing they brought. So now we're learning what was happening earlier. What you do there is you have this tremendous need to tell whoever's standing there watching the show, you want to show them what? The layers. Because it's all the conflict and the drama and the things that people want, that there's an obstacle in the way. That's what makes it so interesting. That's why certain spaces are just so lifeless. It's like nothing ever happened here. They're like all other places. Like in art, we talk about thisness. There's a thisness to certain things. They're only them. But like when you pull off the freeway and every single store and restaurant is at every single other exit,
very low thisness. Yeah, it all feels like it's just been mass produced. But when something is a one-off, yeah, it has high thisness. Yeah. Thisness doesn't mean beauty or perfection. It means some sort of accumulation of history and event in a time and an actual space. Yeah, it's located here and now. This. Yeah, thisness. That may be one nasty painting, but very high thisness. Yeah, it's the layers. It's the background. It's all the stuff that you previously called mistakes. That now you're like, what would it be if I hadn't done that? Who would I be if all that hadn't happened? Yeah, if I'd gotten it right the first time, whatever even that means, oh, how boring, right? Layers. It's like you enjoy the layers, you embrace them. Yeah, you start to celebrate them. Yeah, yeah. Oh, so good.